As crazy as this is going to sound, I think we have underemphasized Cardano's staying power. We always mention that Cardano was built to be an economic operating system for decades to come, while some of our competitors seem to have been built to last for only a couple of VC pumps. But that's not the part we've undersold. We've actually talked too little about how vulnerable some of our very biggest competitors are to regulations they won't be able to escape without becoming us. Ready?
Yeehaw! Let's go!
Today, we are going to discuss the revelation of White House plans that could seriously cut against Bitcoin and Ethereum 1.0, a new bill that's passed in New York that would ban carbon-based crypto mining, Coinbase slamming the brakes on its growth plans, some really big and surprising news out of World Mobile, and a new celebrity on the Cardano NFT scene. If you're considering installing one of these windmills because you know outwardly it'll provide a lot of good environmental virtue signaling, but also inwardly, secretly, you know it will prevent children in your neighborhood from ever knowing the joy of flying a kite, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. And we have just had another record-breaking epic. We've had two back-to-back record-breaking epics. The previous epic, we were supposed to mint 10.3 blocks. We minted 13, which was our all-time best. This previous epic, we were supposed to mint 10.1. We actually minted 17, which again broke our record and was our all-time best. There is something going on that everybody in crypto should be aware of, and it heavily favors Cardano. You might remember back in April, we saw headlines like this one. There was a Freedom of Information Act request in the EU, and some people got a hold of some documents with some pretty choice quotes in there. I'm going to read a couple of them to you. The first one was something like this: if Ethereum is able to shift, we could legitimately request the same from Bitcoin, minutes of the meeting showed. We need to protect other crypto coins that are sustainable. Don't see the need to protect the Bitcoin community. So you can see there's some, if you're inside crypto, you can read a lot of naivety into whoever said these things. If Ethereum is able to shift, we could legitimately request the same from Bitcoin. This is not something that can actually happen. Politically, culturally, Bitcoin shifting to proof of stake because Ethereum was able to, this is not something that is actually on the spectrum of possible. But whoever said this had just the right amount of knowledge of crypto, but also just the right amount of naivety about crypto. They figured if Ethereum can shift from proof of work to proof of stake, of course Bitcoin can too. But the interesting part is the second part. We need to protect other crypto coins that are sustainable. Don't see the need to protect the Bitcoin community. I think what's going on here is that we have a lot of policymakers who, for various other reasons, don't like Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has this Achilles heel. That's the energy consumption of Bitcoin. You can we've talked a million times about this, but you can rationalize it in a million different ways. Talk about using, uh, flare off energy from natural gas wells, whatever. We can come up with a million, talk about using thermal energy from volcanoes, talk about how crypto actually incentivizes the development of sustainable energy. There's a whole line of rationalizations you can use to justify Bitcoin's energy consumption. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of steps for policymakers to get behind those rationalizations. And it's really easy for them to just look at the total energy consumption and say, well, I actually don't like Bitcoin for a lot of other reasons. And, maybe some of those reasons have to do with all the traditional financial institutions who are contributing to their campaigns. But there's a lot of other reasons why they might not like Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has this terrible Achilles heel in its energy consumption. You can see down here, the quotes continue. How would the disappearance of Bitcoin affect consumers? Asked one official involved, with the response reading, participants in Bitcoin are fully aware of the volatility of the currency/investment risk. So, The answer to the question is sort of don't worry about how the consumers will react to the disappearance of Bitcoin. They're aware of the risk. To me, this is the dialogue of politicians who already want to do something, and they're just sort of gauging the political cost of doing that thing. Like, are they willing to eat the cost of doing this thing they want to do? Back in April, it was easy to say, well, maybe that's just the EU. Maybe EU environmental policy is more progressive right now than North America. Maybe we won't see the same kinds of policy movement or policy sentiment in North America that we're seeing over in the EU, which is obviously pretty anti Bitcoin, pretty anti proof of work. But then we got at the end of the week last week, we got this article as well. Report reveals game changing White House crypto plans that could have a serious Bitcoin and Ethereum price impact. The Biden administration is working on a set of policy recommendations targeting Bitcoin and crypto's sky high energy consumption and carbon footprint, according to a report. And again, we're going to get a bunch of interesting quotes from policymakers that are going to exhibit a mixture of, you know, just enough awareness, or I don't want to use the word knowledge, but we'll say awareness of crypto and a couple of, buzz terms within crypto, but also a very large dose of naivety about crypto and the various consensus mechanisms. This first quote: one White House official has said climate and energy need to be considered when developing digital assets such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. So Bitcoin was developed over a decade ago. It was over a decade ago that Bitcoin was developed. When they were designing Bitcoin, it was over a decade ago. And I mean, we've had a few, there's been some technological progress in Bitcoin. There've been certain advances, but not much. Nothing on the order of changing the consensus mechanism for proof of stake, from proof of work to proof of stake. But now this White House official is saying, "Oh, actually, we're going to require that you consider climate and energy when you're developing digital assets." Down below here, it's important, if this is going to be part of our financial system in any meaningful way, that it's developed responsibly and minimizes total emissions. When we think about digital assets, it has to be a climate and energy conversation. I'm sure a lot of the crypto space wasn't thinking like, oh, when you talk about digital assets, the primary thing is climate and energy. But that's the way the Biden administration is looking at it. I mean, these quotes are coming from Costa Samaras, Principal Assistant Director for Energy for the White House Office of Science and Technology. So I'm assuming this is the person who is most in charge of crypto policy, the Principal Assistant Director for Science and Technology. This is probably their crypto person. They say, we've seen reports about noise, local pollution, older fossil generators being restarted in communities. These are not trivial loads. The study, which will reportedly drill down into both the positive and negative aspects of Bitcoin and crypto, is due to be released in August, according to Samaras. So this is the Biden administration getting us ready, letting us know, hey, we're going to target Bitcoin and proof of work in our next study. And again, I don't think, I think there have been some sensational headlines. We talked on this channel previously about reports that Bitcoin miners in New York State were dumping their hot water waste into the Finger Lakes. This is just hot water they were dumping into a lake, and dumping hot water in the lake is going to change the overall temperature of the lake and impact the ecosystem negatively. As soon as those reports started surfacing, I knew we were going to have this rush of environmental consideration of proof of work, which is unfortunate for Bitcoin, but it's great for proof of stake coins like ADA and blockchains like Cardano. Given those dramatic reports about Bitcoin mining and the Finger Lakes, it's no surprise that New York was the first place we saw the passage of an actual bill that would have an impact on Bitcoin mining. Here we see this headline: New York just passed a bill cracking down on Bitcoin mining. Here's everything that's in it. You should be aware. The status of this bill right now, I believe, is still the case over the weekend here. Is that the New York State Assembly has passed this bill. Those are the lawmakers. The lawmakers have passed the bill. Now the executive branch has to sign off on it. So the bill is going to go to the desk of the governor, who could either sign it or veto it. As you can see, the assembly member who actually wrote the bill is kind of trying to walk it back a little bit and say it's not a ban. It's important to understand that this is not a ban. So there's actually some criteria that apply. So they say, for one, we have to be talking about a validator here who is using, as they put it, the energy intensive proof of work authentication method to validate blockchain transactions. So they've got to be proof of work. Second, they have to be drawing electricity from power plants that burn fossil fuels. And third, this has to be an application for an expansion or renewal of permits. So they have to either be renewing or expanding, or it has to be a request for a new permit. If it sounds like if a proof of work validator is just doing their thing, they're just being a Bitcoin mining operation and they're not expanding, renewing, or a new operation, then it sounds like this bill won't really apply to them. They can just kind of keep doing what they're doing. And it also has, I believe, a 2-year timeline on it. So for 2 years, they're just kind of hitting the pause button on expansions, renewals, or new proof of work operations in the state of New York. I don't think the issue is really the contents of this particular bill and what it's going to do for 2 years to the New York proof of work mining industry. But I think it's that a lot of other blue states could kind of follow their lead and decide to enact all kinds of regulations on proof of work mining. And of course, the Bitcoin maximalists are coming out and making some pretty good arguments. You know, they sent that rebuttal letter to the EPA where they said, "Hey, Bitcoin miners are no different than data centers owned and operated by Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, and Microsoft." And really, what you're doing here is you're saying, "Hey, it's okay to have a data center." That's a data center, a big tech data center. It doesn't really matter what kind of energy you're using. But if it's a crypto data center, then it all of a sudden matters what kind of energy you're using. And this is kind of a regulation of the data itself. You're regulating what kind of data a data center can handle and sort of labeling it as an energy use regulation. But I don't think that'll really be effective because I don't think this is really about the energy use. I think what's going on is that in the current administration and a lot of state governments of the same thinking, there's this narrative that's formed that Bitcoin is bad. And it just so happens that the Achilles heel of Bitcoin is its energy use. That's the that's the weak spot where you can attack Bitcoin, the energy use thing. So of course they're attacking the energy use thing. But this rationale, any kind of counter argument about the energy use, it's not really going to be persuasive because it's not really the energy use that they're trying to regulate. They're really trying to regulate Bitcoin. They want to regulate Bitcoin, and there's not a good way to do it except on this energy use issue. Of course, this kind of law in New York, if it's signed by the governor, will pretty much only have the effect of causing some Bitcoin miners to move to jurisdictions that welcome them with open arms, like Wyoming. It won't really have an impact overall on Bitcoin mining. What'll be really interesting, though, will be to see what the Biden administration does at the federal level. If they follow the same kind of framework, if they just say, hey, in the US nationally, fossil fuel based proof of work crypto mining is outlawed. That could have a much bigger impact. Meanwhile, we in Cardano won't have to change a thing because we planned for this and made ourselves proof of stake from the start. But New York State isn't the only one throwing the brakes on growth. Coinbase put out this article, euphemistically titled Update on Hiring Plans, which doesn't tell you much. But when they call it something that's so ambiguous and vague like this, update on hiring plans, it's almost never, hey, we're vastly expanding hiring. It's almost always negative when it's this vague, right? And down here, they did provide a too-long to read, which I like. They say, in response to the current market conditions and ongoing business prioritization efforts, we will extend our hiring pause for both new and backfill roles for the foreseeable future and rescind a number of accepted offers. I love this. Ongoing business prioritization efforts. What business isn't trying to prioritize efforts on an ongoing basis? This is kind of like, hey guys, we're a business trying to do business. Why do they include stuff like this in these corporate communications? in response to current market conditions and ongoing business prioritization efforts. Like, I hope you're engaging in ongoing business prioritization efforts because you're a business. Down below here, they say, how we'll navigate this. We will extend our hiring pause for the foreseeable future. And this might be the most informative paragraph of this entire article. After assessing our business priorities, current headcount, and open roles, we've decided to pause hiring for as long as this macro environment requires. So they're letting us know right there. This is all because of the macro environment. The macro trends that are occurring are necessitating that we continue our hiring pause. We extend our hiring pause for the foreseeable future. There's no end date to this pause. They're just saying we're paused for now with no date on which we end the pause coming up here. They will also rescind a number of accepted offers. When a big public company like this is willing to go out publicly and send the signal, hey, we're pausing hiring and we're also rescinding accepted offers we've already made to potential employees, they're willing to let the entire world know either we don't believe we as a company are growing or we believe that our industry is undergoing some trends right now that are going to result in no growth. I think in the case of Coinbase, this is obviously them saying, hey, macroeconomic environment indicates we're not going to experience growth to make it worthwhile to bring on additional employees. So much so, and it's changed so quickly. We've changed our minds so quickly about this. We're actually rescinding offers we've already made. This is a pretty good appraisal. This gives us a pretty good appraisal of where Coinbase thinks crypto is going, at least in the short term. But again, here we find that what applies to the rest of crypto may not necessarily apply in Cardano. Here, a prominent Cardano project is engaging in what sounds like pretty serious growth. This is a Cardano 360 segment focused on World Mobile. And World Mobile is introducing us to their new team member, James Tagg, who's actually the guy who invented the touchscreen in your mobile phone. Apparently, he invented touchscreen LCD displays, which we all use pretty much every single day in our phones. So, kind of a distinctive record of invention on the part of James Tagg. But he revealed something that's probably more important, and that's that World Mobile is expanding to the US. They're going to bring their aerostats to the US and provide connectivity in places where the US doesn't currently have connectivity. This is a pretty huge step. We knew about the projects they had going on in sub-Saharan Africa and their plans to expand there and all those things. We've learned quite a bit about the projects going on that continent. So it's kind of a surprise that they're now expanding to North America, but it makes sense. Africa is obviously a huge continent. So is North America. North America is actually a gigantic continent as well. And we do have these large areas where there is no connectivity for people. So this is kind of exciting. While the rest of crypto, you could describe many things in the rest of crypto as contracting or on pause or growth suddenly decelerating. One of the most prominent projects in the Cardano ecosystem is not just growing, but expanding to an entire other hemisphere. Finally, it looks like Snoop Dogg won't be the only celebrity in Cardano. NFT Maker posted this. Yes, you heard that right. Martin Lawrence is coming to Cardano. Join Real Marty Marr, I think that's Martin Lawrence, Charles, and Patrick from NFT Maker for a Twitter space on Tuesday at 2 p.m. PST to learn more. Martin Lawrence is coming to Cardano, and I believe from other posts, I saw that he is bringing an NFT series of his own to Cardano. Makes sense. It's being hosted by NFT Maker. So this should be interesting. I think a lot of us who were alive in the 90s will probably remember the very popular sitcom featuring Martin Lawrence. So he's kind of a part of a lot of our younger years. I'm excited to see what kind of NFT series he wants to bring. If it's something cool, I hope it is. But I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. I think a lot of the parts of the world were coming into the real summer weekends. So hopefully you did something fun, barbecues, being outside, hiking, whatever it is you like to do in your neck of the woods. I hope you had a good weekend and that you're starting out a great week. And I will talk to you tomorrow.